Ruthless Mafia boss challenged the Waitress into a fight, unaware. She's a boxing champion. The heavy bag swung on its rusted chain, groaning under the rhythmic impact of leather against synthetic hide, in the dim, amber light of the Iron Heart boxing gym. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed only by the sharp, percussive sound of gloves connecting with force. Maya Reed exhaled sharply with every strike. Jab, jab, cross, hook. Sweat slicked her skin, plastering stray strands of dark hair to her forehead. The gym smelled of old sweat, liniment oil, and the metallic tang of iron, a scent that felt more like home than the drafty apartment she rented 3 blocks away. Here, she was not just a waitress struggling to keep the lights on. Here, she was the Phantom of the Ring, a regional amateur champion who had walked away from the spotlight but kept the fire burning in the shadows. From the corner of the ring, an older man watched her with critical, weary eyes. Pops, her landlord and former coach, leaned against the ropes, chewing on a toothpick. He shifted his weight, favoring his good leg. "You are hitting hard enough to break ribs, kid," Pops said, his voice gravelly. "But your head is not in it. You are angry." Maya stopped the bag with a gloved hand, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. She looked at the peeling paint on the far wall. "Rent is due in 2 days. Pops and the electric bill came in double what it was last month. I am not angry. I am doing math." "Go pro again," Pops said, the same refrain he had offered every week for the last year. "One fight, just one televised bout. You could clear $5,000 in a night, maybe more with your record." Maya unwrapped her hands, shaking her head. The memory of her last sanctioned fight flashed behind her eyes, the blood on the canvas, the corruption of the judges, the feeling that she was just a piece of meat being traded by men in expensive suits. She had won, but the victory had tasted like ash. "I am done with that life," Maya said, her voice firm. "I fight for me now, not for promoters. Besides, I have a shift at the diner in an hour. Real money, honest money," Pop scoffed, pushing off the ropes. "Tips and sore feet. That is what you call honest." Maya grabbed her duffel bag, flashing him a tired but genuine smile. "It pays the rent. Pops. Eventually." She left the sanctuary of the gym and stepped out into the cool, damp night of Graybridge. The city was a sprawling grid of gray concrete and neon signs that flickered with dying gas. It was a hard city, one that chewed people up and spat them out. But Maya had learned long ago that the only way to survive Graybridge was to be harder than the concrete beneath her boots. 5 miles away, across the river that divided the working class from the industrial district, Lucien Valtieri stood in the center of a cavernous warehouse. The air here was different. It smelled of ozone and fear. Lucien adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal suit. He was a man of striking contradictions, violently handsome, with features that could have graced a magazine cover, marred only by eyes that were as cold and deep as the Atlantic in winter. He looked at the man kneeling on the concrete floor before him. The man was trembling, bleeding from a split lip. "I asked for loyalty," Lucien said softly. His voice did not echo. It seemed to absorb the sound in the room. "And you sold our shipping routes to the Russians for $10,000. "I have debts, boss," the man stammered. "Please, I can work it off." Lucien sighed, a sound of genuine exhaustion. He did not enjoy this. The violence was a necessity, a tool to maintain order in the chaos of the underworld, but it bored him. It drained him. He suffered from a chronic insomnia that left him wandering the city streets like a ghost while the rest of the world slept, searching for something he could not name. "Enzo," Lucien said, turning away. A broad-shouldered man in a leather jacket stepped forward from the shadows. Enzo was Lucien's right hand, a blunt instrument of loyalty. Beside him stood Talia, sharp-eyed and lethal, tapping a message onto her phone. "Handle it," Lucien ordered, walking toward the exit. "Cleanly. We are not butchers." He stepped out into the night air, letting the warehouse door clang shut behind him, muffling the sudden plea for mercy that was cut short. Lucien checked his watch. It was 2 a.m. His mind was racing, buzzing with logistics, rival territories, and the hollow ache of a life spent ruling a kingdom of ashes. "Where to, boss?" Talia asked, emerging a moment later, slipping her phone into her pocket. Lucien looked down the street. The rain had started to fall, a fine mist that haloed the streetlights. "I need coffee. Real coffee. Not that sludge from the office." "Harbor Light Diner is the only place open this side of the bridge," Enzo suggested, wiping a speck of dust from his knuckles. Lucien nodded once. "Harbor Light it is." The Harbor Light Diner was a beacon of yellow warmth in the gloom of the docklands. It was the kind of place that smelled permanently of bacon grease and sanitizer, with red vinyl booths that had been patched with duct tape. Maya Reed was the only waitress on the floor. She balanced a tray of dirty dishes on one shoulder, weaving through the scatter of late-night truckers and college students cramming for exams. Her feet ached, and her back was tight from the training session earlier, but her face was a mask of professional indifference. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that contradicted the sudden drop in temperature in the room. The conversation in the diner died instantly. Maya looked up from wiping down the counter. 3 people had walked in. The 2 flanking the center figure were obviously trouble, one bulky and scarred, the other lithe and dangerous. But it was the man in the middle who sucked the oxygen out of the room. He wore a suit that cost more than Maya made in a year. He moved with a predatory grace, his gaze sweeping the room with the casual arrogance of a landlord inspecting a crumbling property. Lucien Valtieri. Everyone in Greybridge knew the name, even if they had never seen the face. He was the buggyman parents used to frighten their children into staying on the straight and narrow. The truckers hurriedly looked down at their plates. The college students froze. Maya just sighed. She squeezed the rag in her hand, annoyed. Thugs meant trouble, and trouble meant no tips. Lucien walked straight to the counter, ignoring the empty booths. He sat on a stool directly in front of Maya. Enzo and Talia flanked him, standing guard like statues. Maya approached him, tossing the rag into a bucket of sanitizer water. She did not look down. She met Lucien's eyes. "Menu is on the board," she said, her tone flat. "Kitchen closes in 30 minutes. What do you want?" Enzo stiffened, looking like he was about to reach across the counter. No one spoke to Lucien Valtieri like that, but Lucien held up a hand, stopping his lieutenant. He looked at Maya, really looked at her. He saw the fraying collar of her uniform. He saw the fatigue bruising the skin under her eyes, but mostly, he saw the stillness. She was not trembling. Her heartbeat, visible in the pulse point of her neck, was steady. "Coffee," Lucien said, his voice smooth and dark like velvet dragged over gravel. "Black, and tell the cook to make it fresh. If I taste the bottom of the pot, I am not paying." Maya raised an eyebrow. "If you want fresh, you wait 10 minutes. If you want it now, you get what is in the pot. I do not control the laws of physics, sir." A sharp intake of breath came from Talia. Lucien's lips curved slightly, a microscopic expression of amusement. "I will wait. I have nowhere to be." "Lucky you," Maya muttered, turning her back on the most dangerous man in the city to fiddle with the coffee machine. The tension in the diner was palpable. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm. Lucien watched Maya work. He noticed the way she moved, efficient, economic. She did not waste energy. When she turned, she pivoted on the ball of her foot. When she reached for a mug, her arm extended in a straight, clean line. It was athletic, disciplined. "You have a name?" Lucien asked when she slid the steaming mug in front of him. "Read the tag," Maya said, tapping the plastic nameplate pinned to her apron. "Maya," Lucien read. "You are bold for a waitress. Maya. People usually have better manners when I sit down." "People usually want something from you," Maya countered, pulling a ticket pad from her apron. "I just want to finish my shift so I can go home and sleep. Are you ordering food or just loitering?" "Careful," Enzo growled, stepping closer to the counter. "You do not know who you are talking to." Maya looked at Enzo, then back to Lucien. "I know exactly who he is. He's the guy taking up my counter space. Order or move." Lucien chuckled, a low sound that vibrated in his chest. "Leave her be. Enzo, She has spirit. I like spirit. It is rare in this city. He took a sip of the coffee. It is fresh. You are competent. Another rarity. Maya ignored the compliment, moving down the counter to refill a trucker's water glass. She wanted them gone. The way Lucian looked at her made her skin prickle, not with fear, but with a strange, heightened awareness. He was analyzing her, dissecting her, and she hated being under a microscope. The door chimed again. A group of 4 men stumbled in, loud and reeking of cheap whiskey. They were low-level soldiers, clearly celebrating something, wearing jackets with the insignia of a minor street gang that paid tribute to the Valtieri family. They did not see Lucian at the counter. They only saw the booths and the waitresses. One of the men, a heavy-set guy with a red face, lurched toward the service station where a young waitress named Jenna was rolling silverware. Jenna was 19, new, and easily frightened. "Hey, sweetheart," the drunk man slurred, reaching out to grab Jenna's arm. "You look lonely over here. Come sit with us." "Please let go," Jenna squeaked, trying to pull away. "Don't be like that," the man laughed, tightening his grip. "We are good tippers. Come on." Lucian watched the scene in the reflection of the mirror behind the counter. He did not move. He was curious to see how his territory was being managed, even by the bottom feeders. But before Lucian could even consider intervening, Maya was moving. She did not run. She glided. One moment she was refilling water. The next she was beside Jenna. "Let her go," Maya said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise of the diner like a whip crack. The drunk man sneered, looking Maya up and down. "Or what? You going to spill coffee on me?" He laughed, looking back at his friends. "Look at this one. She thinks she is tough." He reached out with his free hand, aiming to shove Maya backward. Maya did not flinch. As his hand came toward her, she stepped inside his guard. It was a blur of motion. She caught his wrist with one hand, her thumb digging into a pressure point, and used her other hand to clamp down on his elbow with a sharp, practiced twist. She rotated his arm against the joint. The man howled in pain, his knees buckling. Maya swept his leg with her foot, and he crashed to the linoleum floor with a heavy thud. She held his wrist for 1 second longer, applying just enough torque to keep him pinned, before releasing him and stepping back. "Get out," Maya said, her breathing even. "And take your friends with you." The diner was silent. Even the sizzle of the grill seemed to pause. The drunk man scrambled backward, cradling his arm, his eyes wide with shock. His friends, sobering up instantly at the display of violence, grabbed him and dragged him toward the door, stumbling over each other to escape. Maya smoothed her apron, turned to Jenna, and asked softly, "You okay?" Jenna nodded, trembling. Maya turned back to the counter, ready to apologize to the remaining customers for the disturbance. She stopped dead. Lucian Valtieri was standing. He was not looking at the door where his unruly soldiers had fled. He was looking at her. And this time, the amusement was gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory intensity. He walked around the edge of the counter. This was a violation of the unspoken rules. Customers stayed on one side, staff on the other. But Lucien moved into her workspace, crowding her against the stainless steel refrigerator. The space was narrow. He was tall, looming over her, smelling of expensive cologne and danger. "That was not a barroom brawl move," Lucian said softly. His eyes searched her face, looking for the flinch. "That was a wrist lock. Aikido? Jiu-jitsu. Self-defense class at the YMCA," Maya lied, keeping her chin up. She refused to back away, even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Liar," Lucian whispered. He stepped closer. "You moved like a soldier. You embarrassed my men. Do you know what happens to people who touch my associates?" "He was hurting her," Maya said, her voice hard. "I do not care whose payroll he is on. In this diner, he behaves, and so do you." Lucian's eyes narrowed. The insult stung his pride. A waitress, a nobody, had just cleaned up a mess his own presence should have prevented, and now she was lecturing him. It was intolerable. It was fascinating. "You think you are tough," Lucian said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble that sent a shiver down Maya's spine. You think because you can twist a drunk's wrist, you are a fighter? I think I am working, Maya snapped. And you are in my way. Lucian laughed, but it was a cold sound. He turned to the diner, raising his voice so the terrified patrons could hear. This woman thinks she can dictate terms to the Valtieri family. She thinks she is a warrior. He turned back to her, his face inches from hers. Let us make this interesting. You want to act like a fighter? Prove it. I am not fighting you, Maya said, clutching her ticket pad. No, Lucian said. You are not worthy of fighting me, but I want to see you bleed a little. Maybe it will teach you some humility. He gestured toward the back exit. The alley. 5 minutes, unless you want me to let Enzo finish what that drunk started with your little friend Jenna. It was a low blow, a cruel threat. Maya looked at Jenna, who was pale with terror. She looked at Lucian's smug, imperious face, the anger that she had been suppressing for years, the anger at the corrupt judges, the anger at her poverty, the anger at men who thought they owned the world, flared hot and bright in her chest. You have no idea what you're asking for, Maya said quietly. Enlighten me, Lucian challenged. Maya untied her apron and tossed it onto the counter. Fine. Out back. A ripple of whispers went through the diner staff as Maya marched toward the kitchen door. The cook, an old man named Sal who knew about her training, shook his head, muttering under his breath. He just challenged the waitress. Sal whispered to the dishwasher. He has no clue she is a boxing champion. The alley behind Harbor Light Diner was narrow, slick with rain and illuminated by a single flickering security light. The air smelled of wet asphalt and rotting cardboard. Maya stepped out, rolling her shoulders. The cold rain felt good on her heated skin. She wore her black work trousers and a tight gray tank top, her arms bare, revealing the definition of her muscles that the uniform usually hid. Lucian stood near the mouth of the alley, leaning against a brick wall, unconcerned. Enzo and Talia stood by a pile of crates. Enzo, Lucian said, bored. Play with her. Do not break anything permanent. Just teach her to lower her eyes when I speak. Enzo grinned, cracking his knuckles. He was a brawler, heavy and slow, relying on brute strength. He stepped into the center of the alley, raising his fists in a clumsy street fighting stance. Come here, sweetheart. Uncle Enzo is going to tuck you in. Maya did not smile. She did not talk trash. She exhaled, her breath forming a white cloud in the cold air. She shifted her feet, instantly. Her posture changed. She was no longer a waitress. She settled into a classic orthodox stance. Her knees bent, her weight distributed perfectly on the balls of her feet. Her hands came up, tucking close to her chin, elbows in to protect her ribs. Lucian, who had been checking his fingernails, looked up. He froze. That was not a self-defense stance. That was a professional guard. Come on, Enzo shouted, lunging forward with a wide, telegraphing haymaker. Maya didn't block it. She didn't need to. She simply slipped to the left, a movement so subtle it looked like she had vanished, as Enzo's fist sailed harmlessly through the air where her head had been. Maya pivoted. Pop, pop. 2 quick jabs to Enzo's nose. Fast, blindingly fast. Enzo stumbled back, blood instantly spurting. He roared in confusion and charged again like a bull. Maya danced. She circled him, her footwork pristine. She was cutting angles, keeping him off balance. When he swung a clumsy right hook, she ducked under it, weaving smoothly, and came up with a shovel hook to his liver. The sound of the impact was wet and heavy. Enzo gasped, the air leaving his lungs in a rush. He doubled over. Maya stepped back, giving him room to fall, but he stayed on his feet, wheezing. Stand down, Maya warned, her voice calm. I am going to kill you. Enzo wheezed, straightening up, enraged. He rushed her, trying to grab her, to use his weight to crush her. Maya planted her feet. She fired across, a straight right hand down the pipe. It connected squarely with Enzo's jaw. His head snapped back. Before he could recover, she followed with a left hook that spun him around. Enzo's legs turned to jelly. He collapsed face first onto the wet pavement and did not move. Silence descended on the alley. Maya stood over the fallen man, her chest heaving slightly, rain dripping from her nose. She stayed in her stance, hands up, eyes scanning for the next threat. Slowly, she turned her gaze to Lucien. Lucien Valtieri pushed himself off the wall. The boredom was gone from his face. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes wide with shock. He looked from his unconscious lieutenant to the woman standing in the rain. He had expected a catfight. He had expected begging. Instead, he had just watched a masterclass in violence. Maya dropped her hands but kept her muscles coiled. She looked Lucien dead in the eye, the adrenaline making her irises burn. "Is that all you have?" she asked. Lucien stared at her, the rain soaking his expensive suit, and for the first time in years, the cold emptiness in his chest was replaced by a roaring fire. He wasn't angry anymore. He was mesmerized. "No," Lucien whispered to himself, a slow smile spreading across his face, a smile that was equal parts danger and delight. "That is definitely not all I have." Rain hissed against the asphalt, a steady, rhythmic static that filled the silence of the alleyway. Enzo lay groaning on the wet pavement, clutching his midsection, his expensive leather jacket slick with mud and street runoff. Maya Reed did not move. She stood over him, her chest heaving, the adrenaline still singing in her veins like a high-tension wire. Rainwater dripped from her nose and chin, plastering her shirt to her skin, but she did not wipe it away. Her hands remained raised, fists loosely clenched, her eyes locked not on the man she had just dismantled, but on the man watching from the shadows. Lucien Valtieri pushed himself off the brick wall. Talia, his remaining lieutenant, reached inside her coat, her expression twisting into a snarl of professional violence. She stepped forward, her hand closing around the grip of a weapon concealed in her shoulder holster. "No," Lucien said. The command was soft, barely louder than the rain, yet it froze Talia in mid-step. Lucien walked into the light. He moved slowly, deliberately, the way a predator approaches prey that has proven unexpectedly dangerous. He stopped 3 feet from Maya, close enough that she could smell the sandalwood of his cologne mixed with the metallic scent of the rain. Maya did not back down, though every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run. She knew who he was. She knew that men like Lucien Valtieri did not lose face in public and let the witness walk away. She tightened her guard, shifting her weight to her back foot, ready to strike again if he reached for her. But he did not strike. He simply looked at her. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and unnervingly calm. He swept his gaze over her stance, noting the tuck of her chin, the balance of her hips, the way her breathing was already slowing, controlled and rhythmic. "You have excellent form," Lucien said. His voice was a low rumble in the quiet alley. "Enzo is a brawler. He fights with anger. You fight with geometry." "He attacked me," Maya said, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I finished it." "You did," Lucien agreed. He took another step closer, invading her personal space. Maya forced herself to hold her ground, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. "But you have a problem now. Maya, you just embarrassed a lieutenant of the Valtieri Syndicate. In my world, that is a death sentence. People who humiliate my crew usually do not walk out of the alley." "Then tell your crew to learn how to behave," Maya shot back, the words tumbling out before she could check them. A flicker of surprise crossed Lucien's face, followed immediately by something darker, hotter. It was not anger. It was a glint of admiration, sharp and hungry. He looked at her not as a waitress, not as a nuisance, but as an equal, as a challenge. "You have a sharp tongue," Lucien murmured, tilting his head, "and heavy hands. It is a dangerous combination." He glanced down at Enzo, who was struggling to his knees, coughing, then looked back at her. "I could have Talia put a bullet in your knee right now. It would restore the balance. It would teach the neighborhood respect." Maya's stomach twisted, cold dread pooling in her gut, but she lifted her chin. "You could, but then you would be the man who shot an unarmed waitress because she beat up his hired muscle. That does not sound like respect to me. That sounds like weakness." The silence that stretched between them was thick enough to choke on. Talia sucked in a breath, shocked by the audacity. Then Lucien smiled. It was a small, razor-thin smile that did not quite reach his eyes, but it transformed his face from statuesque to devastatingly human. "You're right," Lucian said. "It would be a waste." He stepped back, giving her room to breathe, though his gaze never left hers. "Let us settle this differently. A test of skill, not a street brawl." He adjusted his cuffs, the diamonds on his watch catching the weak light. "Come to my private gym tomorrow night. Midnight, just you and me. We spar. Proper rules. No weapons, no soldiers interfering." Maya narrowed her eyes, water dripping from her lashes. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you win," Lucian said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a velvet promise, "I will personally ensure that no one from my organization ever steps foot in your diner again. You will have permanent protection. No harassment, no shakedowns, total peace." "And if I lose?" Maya asked. Lucian's smile widened slightly, the predator showing its teeth. "Then you will owe me a favor. Anything I ask, at a time of my choosing." The danger of the phrase hung in the air between them, heavy and ambiguous. A favor could mean anything in his world. It could mean running a package, hiding a weapon, or something far more personal. Maya looked at Enzo, who was finally standing, glaring at her with murderous hate. She looked at the graffiti-scarred walls of the alley. She thought of Pops back at the apartment, counting pennies for the electric bill. She thought of Jenna, terrified behind the counter. If she refused, Enzo would come back. They would burn the diner down. They would hurt her friends. She had exposed herself, and now there was no going back to the shadows. "I'm not afraid of you." Maya lied. It was a necessary lie, one she needed to believe to survive. "I know," Lucian said softly. "That is what makes this interesting." "Fine," Maya said, her voice hard. "Tomorrow night, send me the address." Lucian reached into his jacket pocket. Maya flinched, her muscles coiling, but he only produced a sleek black business card. He stepped forward one last time, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, and tucked the card into the front pocket of her soaked apron. His knuckles grazed the skin of her collarbone, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt of electricity straight to her core. "Do not be late, champion," Lucian whispered. He turned on his heel and walked away, signaling Talia to help Enzo. They disappeared into the rain and the night, leaving Maya alone in the alley, trembling not from the cold, but from the terrifying realization that she had just made a deal with the devil, and she was looking forward to the fight. The address on the card led to a building in the financial district, a stark contrast to the crumbling brick of the Harbor Light neighborhood. This was a tower of glass and steel that pierced the skyline, a monument to wealth and power. Maya arrived at 5 minutes to midnight. She wore her gym bag slung over one shoulder, dressed in her worn-out gray sweatpants and a hooded sweatshirt that had seen better days. Her sneakers were taped at the toes. She felt small standing in the lobby, surrounded by polished marble floors and abstract art that likely cost more than her life's earnings. 2 security guards in dark suits nodded to her without asking for ID, clearly expecting her, and directed her to the private elevator. The elevator ride was smooth and silent, whisking her up to the penthouse level. When the doors slid open, Maya stepped out into a space that looked less like a gym and more like a high-tech cathedral dedicated to physical perfection. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights below. The equipment was matte black and chrome, state-of-the-art machines that hummed with quiet efficiency. There was a full-sized boxing ring in the center of the room, elevated on a platform, illuminated by focused gallery lighting. It was sterile. It was expensive. It had no soul. "You are punctual," a voice said from the shadows. Maya turned. Lucian was standing by the ring. He had shed his suit. He wore black athletic shorts and a tight compression shirt that clung to his torso, revealing a physique that was powerful and densely muscled. He did not look like a businessman now. He looked like a weapon that had been stripped of its casing. Enzo and Talia were there too, standing near the entrance, their arms crossed. Enzo's nose was taped, and his eyes were bruised purple. He watched Maya with a mix of hatred and wariness. "I told you," Maya said, dropping her bag on a leather bench. "I want this over with." She pulled off her sweatshirt, revealing a sports bra and the scars on her shoulders from years of training. She sat down and began to wrap her hands. Her movements were ritualistic, methodical. She ignored the luxury around her. She focused on the familiar texture of the gauze, the tightness of the tape around her knuckles. Lucien watched her. He was fascinated by the way she shut out the world. She did not look at the view. She did not look at the guards. She turned inward, finding a quiet place of violence inside herself. "The rules are simple," Lucien said, stepping into the ring and holding the ropes open for her. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. We stop when one of us cannot continue, or when I am satisfied. Maya climbed the steps and ducked through the ropes. The canvas beneath her feet felt firm, expensive. "And who is judging this?" she asked, bouncing lightly on her toes to warm up. "I am," Lucien said. "Seems fair," Maya said dryly. "Since you are also the opponent, I am a generous god," Lucien teased. Though his eyes remained serious, he pulled on a pair of heavy gloves. He did not wear headgear, neither did she. Maya raised her gloves, settling into her stance. "Let us go." The bell did not ring. Lucien simply moved. He was fast for a man of his size. He closed the distance instantly, throwing a testing jab that snapped the air in front of Maya's face. She slipped it easily, stepping to the side, but he was already pivoting, cutting off the ring. He fought like he conducted business, aggressive, controlling, dominating the space. He used his weight to lean on her, trying to smother her speed. He threw heavy, thudding body shots that shook Maya even through her guard. Maya stayed mobile. She danced around him, popping him with quick jabs to the forehead, stinging him, keeping him frustrated. She was the matador, and he was the bull. But every time she landed a clean hit, he just grinned, shaking it off like it was nothing more than a playful tap. "Is that it?" Lucien taunted, throwing a hook that whistled past her ear. "Hit me. Maya, do not be polite." "I am not being polite," Maya grunted, ducking under a swing and burying her fist into his ribs. "I am being careful not to break my hand on your thick skull." Round 1 ended with them circling each other, breathing hard. By the middle of the second round, the dynamic shifted. The sterile atmosphere of the gym vanished, replaced by the raw, heated reality of 2 bodies in motion. Sweat flew from them in fine sprays with every impact. The sound of leather on flesh echoed off the glass walls. Lucien lunged, trapping Maya in the corner. He did not throw a punch. Instead, he clinched, wrapping his arms around her to neutralize her arms, leaning his full weight against her. It was a valid boxing tactic, but the sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, they were pressed together, chest to chest, hip to hip. The heat radiating from him was intense. Maya could feel the rapid thud of his heart against her own. His arms were like iron bands around her, firm and unyielding. For a moment, the fight paused. Lucien looked down at her. His face was inches from hers. Sweat dripped from his temple, running down the sharp line of his jaw. His eyes were dark, dilated, searching hers with a desperate intensity that had nothing to do with boxing. Maya felt his breath on her lips, hot and ragged. She felt the conflict in his muscles, the instinct to crush her warring with a strange, trembling restraint, a desire to protect the very thing he was fighting. The smell of him filled her senses, musk, exertion, and danger. Her own breath hitched. The air between them crackled, electric and heavy. It would be so easy to stop fighting. It would be so easy to lean forward the final inch and— "Do not," Lucien whispered, his voice rough. "Do not let me win." The words broke the spell. Maya's fighter instinct snapped back into place. He was distracted. He was vulnerable. She exhaled sharply, twisting her hips with violent force. She broke the clinch, shoving his arms up and away to create a sliver of space. In that fraction of a second, she uncorked a left hook to the body, a vicious, perfectly placed shot to the liver. The sound was sickeningly solid. Lucien's eyes went wide. The air left him in a strangled gasp. His legs, so powerful a moment ago, turned to water. He crumpled, dropping to one knee, clutching his side, his forehead pressing against the canvas. The gym went silent. Enzo took a step forward, his hand going to his waistband, but stopped. unsure what to do. Maya stood over Lucian, breathing hard, her hands still up. She waited for him to rise. She waited for the anger. She waited for the order to have her beaten. Instead, a sound bubbled up from the man on the floor. Lucian was laughing. It was a hoarse, wheezing laugh, pained but genuine. He looked up at her, his face red, grimacing through the agony. He shook his head, sweat flying, and looked at her with an expression that made Maya's knees weak. It was pure, unadulterated respect, and beneath it, a burning desire that he no longer bothered to hide. "Good," Lucian wheezed, holding up a gloved hand. God, that was good. He took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing himself to stand. He swayed slightly, still clutching his side, but he waved off Enzo, who had rushed to the ropes. "The winner," Lucian announced, his voice echoing in the silent gym. He pointed a gloved hand at Maya. "By knockout in the second round." Enzo's jaw dropped. "Boss, you cannot be serious. She got a lucky shot." "There is no such thing as luck in this ring." "Enzo," Lucian snapped, his authority instantly returning despite the pain. "Only skill. She beat me cleanly." He looked at Maya, his eyes locking onto hers. "You are untouchable now. Maya Reed. No one in the syndicate touches a hair on your head. No one bothers your diner. That is my word." Maya lowered her hands, unwinding the tension in her shoulders. She felt a strange mix of triumph and confusion. He had lost, but he looked at her like he had found a treasure. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. Lucian stripped off his gloves and tossed them to the floor. "Get cleaned up," he said, turning away, though he moved stiffly. "You have a shift tomorrow." 10 minutes later, Maya walked down the corridor toward the elevators, her bag on her shoulder, her hair damp from a quick wash in the sink. The hallway was stark white, illuminated by buzzing fluorescent lights. "Wait!" She stopped. Lucian was leaning against the wall near the elevator bank. He had put a towel around his neck and pulled on a loose t-shirt, but he still looked rough, undone. He was holding an ice pack to his side. He pushed off the wall and walked toward her. He did not block her path, but his presence filled the narrow hallway. "Who trained you?" Lucian asked quietly. "Why does it matter?" Maya asked, gripping the strap of her bag. "Because you move like a professional," Lucian said. "You have the instincts of a killer, but you hold back. You could have broken my jaw in the first round, but you went for the body. Who taught you that control?" "My father," Maya said, the lie coming automatically. "And life." "Life usually teaches people to be cruel," Lucian countered. He stepped closer, cornering her against the sleek metal of the elevator doors. He was not threatening her, but he was seeking something, a truth she was not ready to give. "Why is a woman with your talent serving coffee to truck drivers for minimum wage? You could be rich. You could be famous." "I do not want to be famous," Maya said, her voice rising. "I want to be left alone. I want a life that does not involve blood and doctors and men like you betting on my pain." "Men like me," Lucian repeated softly. He looked wounded, just for a second. "Is that all I am to you? A better? You are a criminal." "Lucian," Maya said. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, pointing a finger at his chest. "You think this is a game. You think bringing me here, fighting me, making deals, it is just amusement for you, because you are bored, because you own the city, and you have nothing left to break." "You think I'm amused?" Lucian's voice dropped to a whisper. He caught her hand, not hurting her, but stopping her from poking his chest. His fingers were hot against hers. "I am not amused. Maya, I am terrified." Maya froze. "Terrified of what?" "Of how much I wanted you to hit me again," Lucian admitted, his gaze dropping to her lips, then back to her eyes. "Of how alive I felt when you put me on the floor." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with a magnetism that pulled them together. The air felt thin. Maya looked up at him, seeing the loneliness behind the ruthlessness, the man beneath the monster. For a heartbeat. Neither of them moved. Their faces drifted closer, drawn by an invisible gravity. Maya could feel the heat of his body, the roughness of his unshaven jaw. She saw his eyes flutter shut, leaning in, surrendering to the pull. Panic flared in her chest, not fear of him, but fear of herself. fear of the part of her that wanted to lean in, to bridge the gap, to let this dangerous man into her carefully guarded life. She yanked her hand away. "I won the fight," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "Keep your promise. Leave me alone." She hit the elevator button. The doors slid open instantly. Maya stepped inside and turned around. Lucian stood in the hallway, watching her. He did not try to stop her. He just stood there, one hand pressing the ice pack to his ribs, his jaw tightening as he watched the doors slide shut between them. As the elevator descended, Maya leaned her head against the cool metal wall and closed her eyes, trying to slow her racing heart. But even as the distance between them grew, she could still feel the phantom pressure of his hand on hers, and the terrifying realization that for the first time in years, she didn't want to be alone. Up in the corridor, Lucian stared at the closed steel doors. The physical pain in his side was sharp, pulsing with every beat of his heart, but it was nothing compared to the strange, hollow ache opening up in the center of his chest, an ache that told him, with absolute certainty, that the fight was far from over. The week following the spar at the penthouse passed in a blur of rain and neon lights. The truce Lucian Valtieri had promised held firm. No soldiers loitered on the corners. No shakedowns occurred in the back alley. But the peace came with a caveat. Lucian himself. He appeared every night at the Harbor Light Diner, precisely at 11 o'clock. He did not bring his entourage. He came alone, sliding into the booth nearest the register, ordering black coffee and a slice of cherry pie he rarely touched. He called it checking his investment, claiming he needed to ensure the establishment he was protecting remained up to his standards. Maya knew it was a lie. He was there for her. "You are hovering," Maya said on the fourth night, slamming the coffee pot down on his table with a little more force than necessary. "It is bad for business. People get nervous when the king of the underworld stares at them while they eat their eggs." Lucian looked up from his phone, a slow, lazy smile spreading across his face. He looked infuriatingly handsome in a navy turtleneck and a leather jacket, looking less like a mob boss and more like a weary movie star hiding from the paparazzi. "Let them be nervous," Lucian said, sliding a $100 bill across the Formica table. "Nervous people eat faster. I am increasing your turnover rate. You should thank me." "I cannot keep this," Maya said, pushing the money back. "The coffee is $2. "Keep the change," Lucian replied, his voice dropping to that low, vibrating register that made the hair on Maya's arm stand up. "Consider it a hazard pay for dealing with my sparkling personality." Maya glared at him, but she slipped the bill into her apron pocket. She needed the money. The furnace at the apartment had died, and Pops was sleeping in 3 sweaters. Lucian seemed to know exactly where to push. Pride versus survival. He spent the next hour watching her work, his gaze heavy and tangible physically. He teased her when she dropped a fork, making dry comments about her dexterity in the ring versus the dining room. He asked her questions about her life, probing gently at her defenses. Maya tried to remain cold, tried to treat him like any other customer, but she found herself engaging in the banter, her wit sharpening against his. "You are playing with fire, Maya," Jenna whispered later in the kitchen, watching through the service window as Lucian finally stood to leave. "He is the Valtieri Don. You cannot just flirt with him." "I am not flirting," Maya snapped, scrubbing a plate aggressively. "I am surviving him." "You are smiling," Jenna pointed out quietly. "You never smile at the customers. You look at him like he is a challenge you want to solve." Maya stopped scrubbing. She looked down at the soapy water, her reflection distorted in the bubbles. "I hate him. Jenna, he stands for everything I ran away from. Violence, corruption, power." "But," Jenna prompted. "But when he is here," Maya admitted, her voice barely a whisper, "I feel safe, and I hate myself for it." On Friday, Lucian did not order pie. He waited until the diner emptied out, then signaled for Maya to approach the booth. "I have a proposition," he said, clasping his hands on the table. Maya crossed her arms. "I am a waitress. Lucian, I do not do favors. We established that—" "This is a job," Lucian corrected. "Strictly professional. I am hosting an event tomorrow night, the Obsidian Invitational. It is an underground boxing tournament. High stakes. Very exclusive. And you want me to do what? Serve drinks? I want you on security detail, Lucian said. I need someone who can read a crowd, someone who knows what a fight looks like before it starts. And honestly, I want you there because one of the fighters on the undercard dropped out with a torn rotator cuff. If you want the slot, it is yours. Maya stared at him. You want me to fight in an illegal tournament? I want you to do what you were born to do, Lucian said intensely. The purse for the undercard is $5,000. Win or lose. If you win, it doubles. $10,000. That was 6 months of rent. That was a new furnace. That was breathing room. And the catch? Maya asked, narrowing her eyes. No catch, Lucian promised. You fight on your own terms. You wear what you want, and I give you my word. No one touches you without your consent. You are under my personal protection the entire night. Maya looked at his hands, strong and manicured, resting on the table. She thought of the adrenaline of the ring, the song of her blood when the bell rang. She missed it. God, she missed it. Send me the location, Maya said. The warehouse was located in the industrial sector, a massive brick structure that vibrated with the bass of heavy music. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke, expensive perfume, and the copper scent of blood. Maya arrived in her gym gear, a hooded robe pulled low over her face. She felt instantly out of place. The crowd was a mix of terrifying criminal elements and high society thrill seekers. Men in tuxedos shouted bets at bookies, while women in evening gowns cheered for the violence in the ring. She stood near the back, watching a heavyweight match. The brutality was raw, unpolished. It was nothing like the amateur circuit. This was primal. Breathe, a voice murmured in her ear. Maya jumped, spinning around. Lucian was there. He looked devastating in a black tuxedo, a silk scarf draped loose around his neck. He looked like the king of this dark kingdom, commanding and dangerous. You startled me, Maya accused, though her pulse had jumped for a different reason. You look tense, Lucian observed. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough to shield her from the passing crowd. His eyes scanned the room constantly, sharp and protective, tracking anyone who looked at her for a second too long. I am fine, Maya lied. Just absorbing the atmosphere. It is a shark tank, Lucian agreed. But you are a shark, Maya. Never forget that. He guided her through the chaos, his body angling to clear a path for her. He led her away from the roaring main hall and down a quiet service corridor lined with concrete and exposed pipes. The noise of the crowd faded to a dull thrum. Your bout is next, Lucian said. Are you ready? I'm always ready, Maya said, trying to steady her hands. She began to check the tape on her wrists, finding a loose edge. Let me, Lucian said softly. Before she could protest, he took her hand. His fingers were warm and firm. He peeled back the loose athletic tape and smoothed it down with agonizing slowness. His thumb brushed the sensitive skin on the inside of her wrist, right over her pulse point. Maya's breath hitched. The hallway felt suddenly small. Lucian looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. The hardness that defined him, the Mafia Dawn mask, slipped away. In the dim light, he looked merely like a man concerned for a woman he cared about. Be careful out there, Lucian whispered. These fighters, they do not have your discipline. They will fight dirty. I can handle dirty, Maya whispered back, her voice trembling slightly. I know, Lucian said. He lingered for a moment, his thumb tracing the line of her wrist, a caress that felt more intimate than a kiss. But I worry anyway. It is a new habit I cannot seem to break. He released her hand slowly, as if reluctant to let go. Go. Show them who you are. The ring was bathed in blinding white light. The crowd roared, a faceless ocean of noise. Maya stepped through the ropes, shedding her robe. She wore simple black shorts and a sports bra. No logos, no flash. Her opponent was a woman known as the Banshee, a street fighter with a reputation for biting and hair-pulling. The bell rang. The Banshee rushed forward, swinging wild, looping punches meant to overwhelm. Maya did not panic. She slipped into the zone, that quiet, white room in her mind where time slowed down. She saw the opening before it existed. Slip left, pivot, jab. Maya moved with lethal grace. She was a surgeon operating with a sledgehammer. She dismantled the other woman's guard with clinical precision. Every time the Banshee tried to turn it into a brawl, Maya used her footwork to vanish, reappearing at a new angle to land a stinging combination. In the VIP balcony, Lucian stood at the railing. He was gripping the brass bar so hard his knuckles were white. He wasn't watching the betting screens. He wasn't talking to the politicians beside him. He was watching Maya. In the second round, the Banshee grew frustrated and lunged, trying to tackle Maya. Maya saw it coming. She stepped back, waited for the perfect microsecond, and threw a counter uppercut. The punch connected cleanly. The Banshee's head snapped back, and she collapsed to the canvas, out cold before she hit the floor. The crowd erupted. "Maya!" The voice cut through the roar of hundreds. Maya looked up. Lucian was leaning over the balcony railing, his fist raised in the air. He was shouting her name. His face split in a grin of fierce, unguarded pride. He looked like a man who had just won the world. Maya raised a gloved hand to him, a small, private acknowledgement in the middle of the chaos. For a second, it was just the two of them, connected by the invisible thread of adrenaline and victory. 20 minutes later, Maya had collected her payout, an envelope thick with cash, and was making her way toward the exit. She had changed back into her street clothes, her hair wet from the locker room shower, her gym bag heavy on her shoulder. She was buzzing with the high of the win, feeling invincible. "Hey, you, the fighter girl!" A hand grabbed her upper arm, hard. Maya spun around, ready to strike, but stopped when she saw who it was. A man in a disheveled tuxedo, red-faced and reeking of whiskey, was swaying in front of her. He was one of the high rollers from the front row. "You cost me 50 grand, the man spat, his fingers digging into her bicep. "I bet on the Banshee. You ruined my night." "Let go of me," Maya said, her voice dropping to a warning growl. "Now, or what?" the drunk man sneered, yanking her closer. "You think you are tough without a referee to save you? How about you come back to my hotel and work off what you owe me?" Maya shifted her weight, preparing to break his nose. She never got the chance. A blur of black motion swept past her. There was a sickening thud as the drunk man was slammed violently against the concrete wall. Lucian had him by the throat, pinning him, feet off the floor. "You touched her," Lucian said. His voice was terrifyingly low, devoid of any humanity. It was the voice of the monster the city feared. "I told everyone. No one touches her." The man clawed at Lucian's hand, gurgling, his face turning purple. Lucian's eyes were dead, focused entirely on squeezing the life out of the offender. "Lucian!" Maya shouted. Dropping her bag, he didn't hear her. He was lost in a red haze of protective rage. "Lucian, stop!" Maya rushed forward. She didn't try to pull him off. She knew she couldn't overpower him when he was like this. Instead, she placed her hand gently on his shoulder, right where his neck met his tuxedo jacket. "Lucian," she said softly, leaning in close to his ear. "Look at me. It is okay. I am okay." The touch anchored him. Lucian froze. The lethal pressure in his grip eased slightly. He turned his head, his eyes wild and dilated, finding Maya's face. "He grabbed you," Lucian rasped, his chest heaving. "I saw him." "I know," Maya soothed, stroking his shoulder with her thumb. "But he is done now. Put him down, please, for me." Lucian stared at her for a long second, the madness slowly receding, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. He looked at the man gasping under his hand, then back at Maya. With a sneer of disgust, he released his grip. The drunk man crumpled to the floor, coughing and retching, then scrambled away on his hands and knees. Terrified for his life, Lucian did not watch him go. He turned fully to Maya. They were alone in the echoing corridor now, the sounds of the fight night muffled by the thick walls. "I cannot stand it," Lucian confessed, his voice breaking. He reached out, his hand hovering over her arm before his thumb brushed the bruise forming on her bicep where the man had grabbed her. "I cannot stand seeing anyone put hands on you. It makes me want to burn the world down." Maya looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the violence. Yes, but she also saw the desperate, aching vulnerability beneath it. He wasn't trying to possess her. He was terrified of losing her. The adrenaline from her fight, the fear from the assault, and the sheer intensity of his presence collided in her chest. "You are a monster," Maya whispered, stepping closer instead of backing away. Her chest brushed against his tuxedo jacket. "You almost killed him." "He deserved it," Lucian argued, his eyes dropping to her mouth. "You deserve better than this life, Maya. You deserve better than drunk gamblers and back-alley brawls. You are a queen, and you let these insects touch you." "I do not need you to save me," Maya shouted back, the emotion exploding out of her. "I can save myself." "I know you can," Lucian roared back, the sound echoing off the concrete. "But I want to do it anyway, because when you bleed, I bleed." The silence that followed was sudden and deafening. They stared at each other, chests heaving, the air between them charged with enough electricity to light the city. The anger morphed instantly into something else, something hungry and inevitable. Maya didn't know who moved first. One moment they were arguing, the next, Lucian's hands were framing her face, his fingers threading into her damp hair, and his mouth crashed down on hers. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate. It was a collision of pent-up longing and frustration. Maya gasped, opening to him, and he took the invitation, deepening the kiss with a groan that vibrated against her lips. Her hands flew to his chest, bunching the expensive fabric of his shirt. Lucian's arm swept around her waist, pulling her flush against him. His hand splayed across the small of her back, pressing her so close she could feel the hard lines of his body, the rapid thunder of his heart mirroring her own. For a moment, the world dissolved. There was only the taste of him, coffee and mint and danger. There was only the feeling of being held by someone who would destroy the world to keep her safe. It was intoxicating. It was addictive. Lucian's grip tightened, his hand sliding up her spine, possessive and commanding. That grip, that feeling of being held too tight, snapped Maya back to reality. Ownership. The thought cut through the haze of passion like a knife. Maya broke the kiss. Gasping for air, she pushed against his chest, stumbling back a step. Lucian stood frozen, his lips swollen, his eyes blown wide and dark with desire. He reached for her again, instinctively. "Maya." "No," Maya whispered, breathless and shaken. She held up a hand to stop him. Her lips tingled where he had devoured her. She looked at him, at the man who commanded armies, the man who had just kissed her like she was the only woman on earth. "I cannot do this," she said, her voice trembling. "I will not be another thing you own. Lucian, I will not be a trophy you keep on a shelf." "It is not like that," Lucian pleaded, taking a step forward, his voice raw. "You are not a trophy." "Then what am I?" Maya asked, tears stinging her eyes. "Because in your world, everything has a price, and I cannot afford to pay yours." She grabbed her gym bag from the floor. "Thank you for the money. Do not follow me." She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the long, concrete corridor. She did not look back. Lucian watched her go. He stood alone in the dim light, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. He raised his hand, looking at his fingers. They were still trembling. His palm still tingled with the phantom sensation of her waist, the warmth of her skin. He closed his hand into a fist, the physical ache in his chest expanding until it consumed him. She was right. He was a monster. But as he watched her silhouette disappear around the corner, he knew one thing with absolute, terrifying clarity. He would tear his own kingdom apart brick by brick if it meant he could hold her like that again. The sound of the heavy bag being struck was the only rhythm Maya Reed had known for 3 days. It was a dull, wet thud that reverberated through the empty Ironheart boxing gym, echoing off the peeling paint and the rows of silent lockers. Maya drove her fist into the canvas surface again, feeling the shockwave travel up her arm, settling as a dull ache in her shoulder. Her knuckles were raw beneath the wraps, the skin chafed and tender, but she did not stop. Physical pain was manageable, physical pain she understood. It was the other pain, the confusing, gnawing ache in her chest that she could not punch away. She had ghosted him. since the night of the underground fight, since that desperate, consuming kiss in the concrete corridor. She had not answered a single call from the unknown number that lit up her phone screen. She'd taken different routes to the diner. She had slept at the gym twice, curled up on a tumbling mat in the office, just to avoid being found at her apartment. She hit the bag again, a vicious left hook that made the chain groan in protest. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the phantom pressure of Lucian's hands on her waist. She felt the way he had pulled her flush against him. Not like a possession, but like a drowning man clutching a lifeline. That was the terrifying part. She knew what he was. He was the head of the Valtieri syndicate. He was a man who ordered violence as easily as he ordered coffee. And yet, in his arms, amidst the chaos and the blood, she had felt safer than she had in her entire life. "You're going to tear that bag off the ceiling," a voice called out. Maya stopped, her chest heaving, sweat dripping from her chin. Pops was standing by the office door, leaning on his cane, watching her with a frown etched into his weathered face. "I'm just training," Maya panted, wiping her forehead with her forearm. "You are not training," Pops corrected gently. "You are hiding, and you are punishing yourself." "Did something happen at that fight, Maya?" "Nothing happened," Maya lied, turning back to the bag to hide the flush rising in her cheeks. "I just need to focus. I have a shift tonight." "Be careful, kid," Pops warned, turning off the main lights. "You can run fast, but you cannot outrun yourself." Across the city, in the penthouse office of the Valtieri syndicate, the atmosphere was thick with cigar smoke and tension. Lucian Valtieri stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the rain-slicked streets of Greybridge. He had not slept in 48 hours. His reflection in the glass showed a man fraying at the edges. His tie was loosened, his eyes dark and rimmed with red. He checked his phone for the 100th time. No messages, no missed calls, just silence from the one person whose voice he needed to hear. "Boss, we need to make a decision on the shipping containers," Enzo said from the other side of the massive mahogany desk. Lucian ignored him. "Has she clocked in yet?" Enzo sighed, throwing his pen down on a stack of ledgers. "Yes." Talia drove by. "She's at the diner. She looks fine. Lucian, she's just ignoring you. Women do that." Lucian turned, his gaze cold enough to freeze the air in the room. "Careful, Enzo." Enzo held up his hands in surrender, but he pressed on. He was the only one who dared to speak truth to Lucian these days. "Look, while we are talking about her, I have been thinking. Her win at the Invitational made noise. People are asking about the mystery fighter. We could use that." "Use it how?" Lucian asked, his voice low. "We set up a legitimate promotion," Enzo pitched, leaning forward. "We put her face on posters. We run the betting through a shell company. It is a perfect wash for the cash from the dockyards. She is a gold mine. Boss, a marketable asset." Lucian moved so fast Enzo flinched. He slammed his palms down on the desk, leaning over his lieutenant with a snarl. "She is not an asset," Lucian hissed. "She's not a tool for laundering dirty money. She's not a piece of inventory to be used and discarded. I'm just talking business," Enzo stammered, leaning back. "This is not business," Lucian said, straightening up and adjusting his jacket. "If you ever suggest using her like that again, you will find yourself demoted to cleaning the stables. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal," Enzo muttered, looking down. "Good," Lucian said. "Now get the car. There is movement in the Ravello territory, and I have a bad feeling." The mention of the Ravello crew sucked the remaining air out of the room. Adrian Ravello was a vulture, a rival crime lord who had been picking at the edges of Valtieri territory for months. But lately, the attacks had been getting bolder, more personal. The Harbor Light Diner was quiet for a Friday night. Rain lashed against the windows, blurring the neon lights of the street outside into streaks of red and blue. Maya wiped down the counter, her nerves frayed. The silence she had sought at the gym now felt oppressive. Every time the door chimed, she jumped, expecting to see Lucian's dark silhouette, but it was always just a trucker or a lost tourist. She went to the back entrance to take out the trash. She pushed open the heavy steel door and stepped into the alley, dragging the black bag toward the dumpster. The motion sensor light flickered on. Maya froze. On the back door of the diner, right at eye level, someone had carved a symbol into the metal with a knife. It was a jagged, crude letter R, enclosed in a circle. The Ravello crest. It was not just graffiti. It was a territorial marker. It was a threat. Maya dropped the trash bag, her heart hammering against her ribs. She stared at the jagged scratches, feeling a cold wave of realization wash over her. This wasn't about the diner. This was about her. She was being marked because of her association with Lucien. "Hey!" Maya spun around, a scream dying in her throat. Lucien was standing at the mouth of the alley. He was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, his shoulders hunched against the rain. He looked like a man who had walked through hell just to stand in this dirty alleyway. He saw the fear on her face. He saw her staring at the door. Lucien's eyes moved to the carving. His face went pale, then hardened into a mask of pure, terrifying rage. "When did you find this?" Lucien demanded, stepping forward. "Just now," Maya whispered. Then the fear turned into anger, hot, righteous anger. She shoved him, her hands slamming against his wet chest. "Look at this! Look at what you brought here!" "Maya, listen to me," Lucien started, reaching for her. "No!" Maya shouted, backing away. "I told you to leave me alone. I told you I did not want this. Now I have rival gangs marking my workplace. What is next? Lucien, do they burn my apartment? Do they go after Pops?" "I will not let that happen," Lucien vowed, his voice cracking. "I have guards on your apartment. I have eyes on the gym." "I do not want your guards!" Maya screamed, her voice breaking with the weight of her terror. "I want my life back. You dragged your war into my world. You made me a target. You were already a target." Lucien yelled back, losing his composure. He closed the distance, crowding her against the brick wall, shielding her from the wind. "From the moment you knocked Enzo out in this alley, you were on the radar. From the moment you stepped into that ring at the warehouse, Ravello knew who you were. You think ignoring me keeps you safe. It just leaves you exposed. So what is the solution?" Maya demanded, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "I become your property? I hide behind your soldiers?" "I do not know," Lucien confessed. The admission hung in the air, raw and shocking coming from a man who always had a plan. He looked down at her, his eyes searching hers with a desperation that shattered her heart. "I do not know how to fix this. All I know is that the thought of them hurting you, it paralyzes me." "Then go," Maya sobbed quietly. "If you care about me, leave. Let me fade back into the background." "I cannot," Lucien whispered. He took her hand. His fingers were trembling. The great Lucien Valtieri, the man who made the city tremble, was shaking. "Come inside," he said. "Please, we cannot talk out here." They sat in the furthest booth, tucked away in the shadows. The diner was empty now, save for Jenna, who was hiding in the kitchen, sensing the volatility of the situation. Lucien sat across from Maya, his hands clasped tightly on the table. He hadn't touched the coffee she placed in front of him. "Ravello is escalating," Lucien said, his voice low and urgent. "That mark on the door, it means he sees you as a weakness, a leverage point against me. Because you let him," Maya said bitterly, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "If you had just treated me like a stranger, none of this would be happening." "I tried," Lucien admitted. He looked out the window at the rain, then back at her. "God help me. I tried, but you are the only thing in this city that feels real to me. When I am with you, I do not feel like the boss. I do not feel like a weapon someone points at a problem. I feel like a man." He reached across the table, his hand hovering over hers. "You make me want to be someone else, someone who deserves you." Maya looked at his hand, the hand that had bruised the throat of the man who grabbed her, the hand that had held her with such tenderness in the dark corridor. She wanted to take it. Every cell in her body yearned to reach out and hold on, but she couldn't. She pulled her hand back, tucking it into her lap. "That is not enough, Lucien," she said, her voice trembling. "I cannot love a man who spills blood for a living. I cannot build a future on a foundation of violence. I am not built for this life. I will break." Lucian flinched as if she had struck him. The light in his eyes dimmed, leaving him looking hollowed out. "I would never let you break," he whispered. "You would not have a choice," Maya said. "The bullet does not care who it hits." Crack. The sound was louder than thunder. The front window of the diner exploded inward in a shower of razor-sharp glass. "Get down!" Lucian didn't think. He didn't hesitate. In the fraction of a second between the first shot and the second, he vaulted over the table. He tackled Maya, slamming her body down onto the linoleum floor behind the counter. Pop, 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 pop. Automatic gunfire shredded the air. Bullets tore through the red vinyl booths, shattered the napkin dispensers, and decimated the pie display case. Glass rained down like deadly confetti. Maya curled into a ball, screaming, her hands over her head, but she felt a heavy weight pressing her down, covering her completely. Lucian was on top of her. He had shielded her body with his own, turning his back to the hail of bullets. He pressed her face into the crook of his neck. His arms locked around her head and waist. She could feel his heartbeat pounding against her chest, a frantic, terrifying rhythm. Then, as quickly as it started, the shooting stopped. Tires screeched outside as a car sped away into the rainy night. Silence fell over the diner, a ringing, dusty silence broken only by the hiss of steam from the punctured espresso machine and the distant wail of sirens. "Lucian?" Maya whispered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. Lucian groaned. It was a wet, tight sound. He pushed himself up on one arm, his other hand immediately going to Maya's face. He checked her frantically, his eyes wild. He touched her cheeks, her arms, her shoulders, brushing away shards of glass. "Are you hit?" he demanded, his voice raspy. "Maya, look at me. Are you hit?" I do not think so," Maya stammered, checking herself. She was covered in glass dust, but she felt no pain. She looked up at him. "Lucian, are you—" Her words died in her throat. Lucian's white shirt was soaked in red on the left shoulder. A dark, spreading stain was moving quickly down his chest. "You are bleeding!" Maya gasped, horror seizing her. Lucian glanced at his shoulder, wincing. "It is a graze. I am fine." "You are not fine," Maya cried. She scrambled out from under him, grabbing his good arm. "Get up. We have to get to the kitchen. The police are coming." She dragged him to his feet. He stumbled, his face gray with shock and pain, but he let her lead him. They practically fell through the swinging doors into the kitchen. "Jenna," Maya shouted, "get the first aid kit. And towels, clean towels." Jenna, who had been cowering under the prep table, scrambled up, pale as a sheet, and ran to the office. Maya pushed Lucian against the stainless steel prep counter. "Let me see." Her hands, usually so steady in the ring, were shaking as she unbuttoned his ruined shirt. She peeled the fabric back. The bullet had torn a furrow across the top of his deltoid muscle. It was deep and ugly, oozing blood, but it hadn't hit the bone or the artery. "Oh, God," Maya breathed, pressing a clean dish towel against the wound. Lucian hissed through his teeth, his head dropping back against the metal shelf. His good hand came up to grip her waist, steadying himself. They were pressed together in the cramped space between the stove and the counter. The smell of blood mixed with the scent of burnt coffee and ozone. "You took a bullet," Maya whispered, staring at his chest. "You jumped in front of it." Lucian opened his eyes. They were hazy with pain, but the intensity in them pinned her to the spot. "I told you," he rasped. "I would burn the world down." "You idiot," Maya choked out, tears spilling over. She pressed harder on the towel, trying to stem the flow. "You could have died." "Better me than you," Lucian murmured. He leaned his forehead against hers. He was heavy, his strength waning, but he refused to let go of her waist. Their breaths mingled in the small space. Maya could feel the heat radiating off him. She looked at his lips, parted and pale, and the urge to kiss him, to prove he was still alive, was overwhelming. For a moment there was no war, no Ravello, no Waitress and Mafia dawn, just a man and a woman covered in glass and blood, realizing that death had missed them by inches. "Come with me," Lucian whispered, his voice pleading. "Enzo is 5 minutes away. I have a safe house in the hills. No one knows about it. Please, Maya, let me take you where it is safe." Maya closed her eyes, fighting the desperate desire to say yes, to let him fold her into his world and protect her. But she opened her eyes, and the steel was back in her spine. "No," she said softly. Lucian pulled back, confusion clouding his pain. "Maya, they just shot up the diner. Next time they will not miss." "I know," Maya said, her voice firming, "but I will not run, and I will not be cargo. Lucian, I will not be hidden away in a tower while you fight battles in the street. If I leave with you now, I lose everything I am. I become just the Dawn's girlfriend, the liability." "You are not a liability," Lucian argued weakly. "I am if I hide," Maya insisted. "I am staying. I will stay at the gym. It is a fortress. Pops has a shotgun and friends on the force, but I am not going with you." The back door swung open with a crash. Enzo burst in, gun drawn, followed by 2 other soldiers. "Boss!" Enzo shouted, lowering his weapon when he saw them. He saw the blood. "Christ, we need to move. The cops are 2 blocks out." Lucian looked at Maya. He looked at the stubborn set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. He knew he couldn't force her, not without breaking the fragile trust that existed between them. He grimaced, pushing himself off the counter. He swayed, and Enzo grabbed his good arm. "This is not over," Lucian swore, his voice a low growl. He gripped Maya's chin with his blood-stained hand, forcing her to look at him. "I will end this. I will wipe Ravello off the map, and when it is safe, I am coming back for you. Go," Maya whispered, her heart breaking. "Just go." Enzo half-carried, half-dragged Lucian out the back door. Maya stood alone in the kitchen, clutching the bloody towel to her chest. She listened to the tires squeal away, followed seconds later by the blue flash of police lights reflecting off the stainless steel. She sank to the floor, her legs finally giving out. She looked at the blood on her hands, his blood. She was terrified. She was furious. But as she sat there in the wreckage of her life, she finally admitted the truth to the empty room. She was in love with him, and that was more dangerous than any bullet. The silence in the Harbor Light diner was louder than the gunfire had been. 3 days had passed since the shooting, and the plywood covering the shattered front windows blocked out the gray light of the city, turning the interior into a perpetual twilight. There were no customers. The regulars, the truckers who had been coming for 10 years, the college kids, they all stayed away. The red R carved into the back door had done its job. It was a mark of plague. Maya Reed stood behind the counter, staring at the empty stools. Her paycheck for the week was sitting on the register. It was light, painfully light. "We are bleeding out, kid," Sal said from the kitchen doorway. The old cook looked tired, wiping his hands on a stained rag. "Vendor refused to deliver produce this morning. Said he does not want his trucks parked in a war zone." Maya gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. "I will fix it, Sal. I promise." "How?" Sal asked gently. "You are a fighter, Maya, but you cannot punch a reputation back into shape. Ravello is squeezing us." Maya didn't have an answer. She clocked out early, the guilt sitting heavy in her stomach like a stone. She walked the long way to the Ironheart boxing gym, sticking to the main roads, checking her reflection in every shop window to see if she was being followed. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another unknown number. She let it go to voicemail, just like the dozen before it. But the sanctuary of the gym offered no peace. When she arrived, Pops was in the office, slamming the receiver of the rotary phone down so hard the bell chimed. He looked up, his face grim. "That was the insurance company," Pop said, his voice gravelly. "They are canceling our policy. High risk. They said someone tipped them off that we are harboring criminal elements." Maya sank onto the bench press, burying her face in her hands. "It is Ravello. He's suffocating everything I touch." "You have to make a call, Maya," Pop said, limping over to stand in front of her. "You cannot fight a ghost. You need a monster to kill a ghost. You need to call Valtieri." "I cannot," Maya whispered. "If I call him, I am letting him win. I am admitting that I belong in his world." "You are already in his world," Pop said, his voice softening. The only question now is whether you survive it." Lucian Valtieri sat in the back of an armored SUV, watching the city blur past through tinted, bulletproof glass. His shoulder throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache where the bullet had grazed him, a constant reminder of how close he had come to losing the only thing that mattered. "Boss, you need to see this," Enzo said from the front seat, passing a tablet back. Lucian took the device. On the screen was a grainy photo. It was Maya, taken during the underground fight at the warehouse. She was mid-punch, her face twisted in fierce concentration, blood on her cheek. It was a powerful image, a warrior queen. But it was the caption circulating on the dark web forums that made Lucian's blood run cold. The Valtieri weakness. 50,000 for her location, 100,000 for her head. "It is not just a hit," Lucian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It is a recruitment poster." "Ravello is smart," Enzo admitted grudgingly. "He knows you are obsessed with her. If he takes her, he breaks you. Or worse. He forces her to fight for him. He turns your queen against you. It is a power move to show the other families that he can take whatever he wants from the Valtieri syndicate." Lucian handed the tablet back. His hand was steady, but inside, a dam was breaking. "Turn the car around," Lucian ordered. "We're supposed to be meeting the council." Enzo protested. "I said turn around," Lucian roared, the sound filling the confined space. "We are going to Ironheart." The gym was dark when Lucian arrived, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the high, clear-story windows. He ordered Enzo and the guards to stay outside. He needed to do this alone. He found her by the speed bag. She wasn't hitting it with her usual rhythm. She was slashing at it, her movements erratic, fueled by exhaustion and rage. She wore a gray hoodie with the sleeves cut off, and in the dim light, she looked small, vulnerable. "Go away," Maya said without turning around. She kept hitting the bag. "Thwack, thwack, thwack." "I cannot," Lucian said. He stepped into the circle of light. He looked different than the last time she had seen him. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that hid his bandages. He looked tired. Maya spun around, her eyes blazing. "I told you to leave me alone. Look at what is happening. Lucian, the diner is dying. Pops is losing his insurance. There is a price on my head." "I know," Lucian said quietly. "I saw the bounty." "You saw it?" Maya let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "You caused it. You brought this poison into my life. I was fine. I was a nobody. I was surviving." "You were drowning," Lucian shot back, his voice rising. "Woo, you were hiding in the dark, pretending you were not special, pretending you did not have fire in your blood. At least I was safe," Maya screamed. She marched toward him, closing the distance. "At least my friends were safe." "I can keep you safe," Lucian insisted. "I can burn Ravello to the ground. I have the men. I have the power." "And then what?" Maya demanded, shoving his chest. He stumbled back a step, gritting his teeth as the movement pulled at his wound. "Then another Ravello comes? And another? When does it end? Lucian, when did the bullets stop coming through the window?" "I do not know," Lucian confessed, his voice cracking, the composure he wore like armor shattered. "I do not know when it ends. All I know is that the thought of you on that list, the thought of anyone hurting you, it makes me want to tear this city apart with my bare hands." "Stop trying to save me," Maya yelled, hitting his chest again, harder this time. Her fists thudded against him, frustration pouring out of her. "I hate you. I hate that you are here. I hate that you made me care." She hit him again, tears streaming down her face now. "I hate you." Lucian didn't back away. He reached out and caught her wrists mid-swing. His grip was firm but careful, anchoring her. "Maya," he breathed. He pulled her in. The momentum shifted instantly. The anger that had been driving her collapsed, leaving a vacuum that was instantly filled by something hotter, more desperate. Maya stopped fighting. She looked up at him, her chest heaving against his, her wrists held against his heart. They stood there for a long, trembling second, the air between them charged with the electricity of a storm finally breaking. "You do not hate me," Lucian whispered, his eyes searching hers, dark and pleading. "Tell me to leave, and I will walk out that door and let Ravello come for me. But do not lie to me. Do not say you hate me." Maya looked at him. The dark circles under his eyes, the way his jaw clenched in pain, the sheer, terrifying devotion in his gaze. "I cannot," she whispered, her voice breaking. Lucian released her wrists. His hands slid up her arms, slow and reverent, until they framed her face. He lowered his forehead to rest against hers. "I am so sorry," he murmured against her skin, "for everything." Then he kissed her. It was nothing like the first kiss in the warehouse corridor. That had been an explosion, a collision of adrenaline and fear. This was different. This was a surrender. Lucian's lips moved over hers with agonizing slowness, tender and deliberate. He tasted like rain and sorrow. His hand slid down to her waist, pulling her closer, holding her as if she were made of glass that he was terrified of shattering. Maya didn't pull away. She melted. Her hands, which had been fists a moment ago, uncurled and slid up his chest, her fingers curling into the fabric of his sweater. Clinging to him, she made a soft sound in her throat, a whimper of relief, of finally letting go of the weight she had been carrying. She opened her mouth to him, and the kiss deepened, becoming a slow, rhythmic dance. It was an admission. It was a conversation without words. "I am here. I am scared. I need you." Lucian's thumb traced the line of her jaw, then brushed over her lower lip as they broke apart, breathless. He didn't let her go. He kept her pressed against him, his arms wrapped securely around her back, his chin resting on top of her head. Maya rested her ear against his chest. She could hear his heart racing, a frantic, galloping rhythm that betrayed his calm exterior. She pressed her palm over it, feeling the life force of the man who had turned her world upside down. "I'm terrified," Maya whispered into his sweater. "I know," Lucian said, his voice rumbling in his chest. He kissed the top of her head. "I am too, but we are not doing this alone anymore." An hour later, the emotional storm had passed, leaving a quiet, focused clarity in its wake. They sat side by side on the edge of the boxing ring, their legs dangling. Lucian's shoulder brushed against hers, a point of contact neither of them wanted to break. "There is a way out," Lucian said, staring at the empty ring. "But you are going to hate it." Maya took a sip from her water bottle. "Try me. Ravello is hosting a tournament," Lucian explained. "The King's Gambit. It is high stakes. Invite only. He's using it to consolidate power, to show the other families he is the new apex predator. He wants you there. Maya, he sent the invite to the gym an hour ago. He wants to recruit me? He wants to own you," Lucian corrected darkly. "He wants to put the woman who knocked out my lieutenant and saved my life in his ring. If you fight for him, it humiliates me. If you refuse, he kills you." Maya gripped the edge of the canvas. "So what is the plan?" "You accept," Lucian said. "You enter as a neutral party, a free agent. I will publicly denounce you. Say I cut ties. That will make Ravello trust that you are truly alone. He will put you in the main event. And while everyone is watching me," Maya guessed. "While everyone is watching you, Ravello will be exposed," Lucian said. "He will be in the building. He loves the spotlight. I will have a team in place. Once he is in the open, we take him down. We dismantle his leadership in one night." "You want me to be bait," Maya said flatly. "I want you to be the Trojan horse," Lucian said, turning to look at her. "But I will not force you. If you say no, we find another way. We go to the mattresses. We fight a street war." "A street war means bullets in the diner," Maya said. "It means Jenna gets hurt. It means Pops gets hurt." "Yes," Lucian admitted. "It does." Maya looked at her hands. She thought about the R carved into the door. She thought about the insurance cancellation. She thought about Lucian bleeding on the kitchen floor. "I will do it," Maya said. Lucian let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. "But," Maya added, turning to lock eyes with him, "I have a condition." "Name it," Lucian said. "Money? A house? Anything?" "No," Maya said. "When this is over, when Ravello is gone and the threat is over, you choose. You either walk away from the syndicate or you walk away from me. Permanently." The silence stretched thin. Lucian stared at her, stunned. She was asking him to dismantle his life, to give up his crown. "Maya, I meant what I said, Lucian. she said, her voice steady. I cannot love a man who comes home with blood on his hands. I want a life, a real life. I want to be able to sleep at night without wondering if the phone call is the coroner. If you want me, you have to choose. Lucian looked at her, the fierce set of her jaw, the beauty that made his chest ache. He realized with a jolt that the empire he had built meant nothing if he had to experience it without her. Okay, Lucian whispered. Maya blinked. Okay, if we survive this, Lucian vowed, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I am done. I will find a way out. The next week was a blur of secret preparation. To the outside world, Maya Reed was a ghost. To the underworld, she was a mercenary looking for a payday. But inside the locked doors of Ironheart Gym, she was a partner. Lucian was there every night. He couldn't spar because of his shoulder, so he held the focus mitts. Jab, jab, slip, Lucian barked. Maya moved, her breath hissing between her teeth. Pop, pop, whoosh. Good, Lucian said. Again, keep your right hand glued to your chin. Ravello's fighter is a headhunter. They moved in a rhythm that was almost a dance. Lucian learned how she breathed before she threw a hook. Maya learned how to read the subtle twitch of his eye before he called for a combination. The training was laced with a new, heavy intimacy. When Maya stumbled from exhaustion, Lucian's hand was instantly there at her waist, steadying her. He would hold her there for a second too long, his thumb rubbing circles against her rib cage. When the round ended, Maya would walk over to him, wiping the sweat from his brow with the end of her towel, her fingers lingering on his cheek. They didn't speak about the ultimatum. They didn't speak about the danger. They spoke in touches, a hand on the small of the back, a brush of shoulders, a lingering look across the ring. Trust was layering over desire, turning the chemical attraction into something solid, something worth dying for. The night before the tournament, Lucian decided it was too dangerous for Maya to return to her apartment. There is a loft above the gym, Pop said, handing Lucian a key ring. I used to sleep there back in the day. It has a bed and a lock. You two stay put. I will watch the monitors downstairs. The loft was small, dusty, and smelled of old leather and cedar. Rain drummed against the single skylight. They ate takeout Chinese food sitting on the floor, their knees touching. The tension of the coming fight hung over them, but in this small space, it felt manageable. What were you afraid of when you were a kid? Maya asked, stabbing a dumpling with a chopstick. Lucian leaned back against the ancient sofa. Silence. My father. He was a loud man. When the house went silent, it meant he was angry. It meant someone was going to get hurt. He looked at her. You? Not being enough, Maya admitted softly. My dad pushed me hard. He wanted a son. He got a daughter who could punch. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth the space I took up. Lucian reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You take up all the space in my head. Maya, you are more than enough. Later, when the lights were out, they lay on the single mattress. At first, they lay on opposite sides, staring at the ceiling, fully clothed. The distance felt miles wide. Lucian, Maya whispered into the dark. I am here. I do not want to be alone tonight. Lucian moved. He shifted across the mattress and pulled her into his arms. Maya turned, burying her face in his chest, inhaling the scent of him. She wrapped her leg over his, tangling their limbs together. There was nothing sexual about it. It was deeper than that. It was two soldiers in a foxhole, seeking warmth before the battle. Lucian held her tight, his chin resting on her hair, his good arm draped protectively over her waist. Maya could feel the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Tell me what it looks like, Maya whispered. The normal life. Lucian was quiet for a long time. She thought he had fallen asleep. A house near the coast, Lucian finally said, his voice raspy with sleep. Somewhere quiet. I run a business. Maybe logistics. Something boring. You coach. We have a dog. We argue about what to eat for dinner, not about who is trying to kill us. Maya smiled against his shirt, a tear slipping from her eye to soak into the fabric. That sounds nice. It sounds perfect, Lucian murmured, They fell asleep like that, knotted together in the dark, holding on to the fragile promise of a future that seemed 1,000,000 miles away, outside. The rain continued to fall on Greybridge, washing the streets clean for the violence that would come with the morning. The King's Gambit tournament was held in an abandoned municipal arena, a hulking skeleton of concrete and steel on the outskirts of Greybridge. The air inside was thick enough to choke on, a toxic cocktail of cigar smoke, adrenaline, and the metallic tang of dried blood. Maya Reed stood in the tunnel leading to the ring, bouncing lightly on the balls of her feet. She wore a simple black robe, the hood pulled up to shadow her face. She was not Maya the waitress tonight. She was not the girl who poured coffee and worried about the electric bill. She was a weapon forged in the fires of Ironheart Gym, out in the darkness of the mezzanine, hidden among the shadows of the support pillars. Lucien Valtieri watched. He wore a heavy wool coat over a Kevlar vest, his eyes scanning the crowd with the intensity of a sniper. He saw Adrian Ravello's men posted at every exit. He saw the glint of weapons concealed under jackets. He looked down at the small figure walking toward the ring, and his heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, terrifying rhythm that had nothing to do with fear for himself and everything to do with love for her. "Do not die," Lucien whispered to the empty air. "Please, God, do not let her die." The crowd roared as Maya stepped through the ropes. They did not know her name, only her alias, the Shadow. But they would know her by the end of the night. The bracket was brutal. 8 fighters, single elimination, no rules except to remain standing. Maya's first opponent was a kickboxer from the West Coast with legs like tree trunks. Maya took a heavy shin kick to the ribs in the first 30 seconds that nearly folded her, but she didn't panic. She breathed through the pain, found her range, and dismantled the kicker with a surgical precision that silenced the hecklers in the front row. A left hook, a pivot, and a straight right hand that sent the woman crashing to the canvas. 1 down, 2 to go. By the time she reached the semifinals, Maya was bleeding from a cut above her eyebrow. Her hands ached inside her gloves, but she was moving with a terrifying fluidity. She was fighting for more than a purse now. She was fighting for the right to exist. Between the semifinal and the final match, the arena plunged into darkness for a dramatic lighting change. In the confusion, a figure in a hooded technician's jacket slipped through the security cordon and ducked under the ropes into Maya's corner. Maya flinched, raising her guard, but a familiar hand caught her wrist. "Easy," Lucien's voice whispered, low and rough. He pushed back his hood just enough for her to see his eyes. He grabbed a water bottle and sprayed it into her mouth, then pressed a cold towel against the swelling on her cheek. "You are taking too many hits," Lucien murmured, his thumb brushing the tender skin under her eye. His hands, usually so steady, were trembling slightly. "I have to get close to land the big shots," Maya panted, leaning into his touch. "Is Ravello here?" "He's in the skybox," Lucien confirmed, glancing up at the glass-fronted VIP booth that overlooked the arena. "He's watching you like you are a prize horse he intends to buy. My team is in position. Once the final bell rings, we move." "Be careful," Maya whispered, gripping his forearm with her gloved hand. Lucien paused. He looked at her, sweaty, bruised, bloodied, and more beautiful than anything he had ever seen in his life. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you need to know something. Whatever happens in the next hour, I have already chosen. The syndicate, the power, the reputation, it is all ash. You are the only thing that is real. Lucien, win," Lucien commanded softly. "Win so we can go home." He slipped away into the shadows just as the lights flared back on, blinding and white. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the main event. In the red corner, the undefeated pride of the Ravello crew." The Hammer, a woman stepped into the ring who looked less like a fighter and more like a force of nature. She was taller than Maya, heavier, with scars mapping her arms and a smile that promised violence. The bell rang. It was not a boxing match. It was a war. The Hammer fought dirty from the first second. She stepped on Maya's toes to trap her, threw elbows in the clinch, and aimed low whenever the referee was blinded. Maya took a headbutt in the second round that opened the cut on her brow again, sending a stream of blood into her eye. The world blurred into red and gray. Maya staggered back, wiping her eye, trying to clear her vision. The hammer smelled blood and charged, unleashing a flurry of body shots that drove the breath from Maya's lungs. Maya hit the ropes hard. Her legs felt like lead. The roar of the crowd washed over her, a deafening tide demanding her fall. "Stay down," a voice in her head whispered. "It is easier to stay down." Then she saw them. In her mind's eye, she saw Jenna terrified behind the counter. She saw Pops limping around the gym. She saw Lucien bleeding on the kitchen floor of the diner, looking at her with that desperate, worshipping love. "No one decides when you stay down," Lucien had told her. A surge of stubborn, white-hot rage ignited in Maya's chest. It burned through the exhaustion. It burned through the pain. The hammer threw a wide right hook, expecting the finish. Maya ducked. She didn't just slip the punch, she flowed under it. She pivoted on her back foot, generating torque from the ground up. "No!" Maya screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. She unleashed a three-punch combination, a shovel hook to the liver, a left uppercut that snapped the hammer's head back, and finally, a straight right hand that carried every ounce of her frustration, her fear, and her love. The impact sounded like a gunshot. The hammer's eyes rolled back. She collapsed backward, stiff as a board, and hit the canvas with a vibration that shook the ring. The referee didn't even bother to count. He waved his arms. "Winner, the Shadow!" The arena exploded. Beer cups rained down. People were screaming, but Maya didn't raise her hands in victory. She spun around, her eyes locking on the VIP skybox. The chaos of the knockout was the signal. "Now!" Lucien shouted into his comms earpiece. From the exits, men who had been posing as janitors and security guards drew weapons. They were Lucien's loyalists. They stormed the stairs leading to the skybox, but Adrian Ravello was not stupid. He had a back door. Maya watched as the glass of the skybox shattered. Gunfire erupted on the mezzanine. The crowd panicked, stampeding toward the exits in a terrified wave of humanity. Maya ducked through the ropes, jumping down to the concrete floor. She had to get to Lucien. She spotted him on the second-level landing. He was engaging Ravello's bodyguards, his movements efficient and lethal. He was clearing a path, but he didn't see what was behind him. Enzo, Lucien's right-hand man, the lieutenant who had been by his side for a decade, stepped out from behind a pillar. He wasn't aiming at Ravello's men. He was raising his pistol at Lucien's back. The betrayal was written in the cold set of Enzo's jaw. He saw an opportunity. With Lucien dead and Ravello cornered, Enzo could take the throne. "Lucien!" Maya screamed, but her voice was lost in the cacophony of the stampede. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She ran. Maya vaulted over the railing of the stairs, ignoring the drop. She landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact, and sprinted up the steps. She was a blur of motion, shoving past fleeing spectators, using her elbows to clear a path. Enzo steadied his aim. His finger tightened on the trigger. Maya launched herself. She hit Enzo from his blind side, tackling him just as the gun went off. Bang! The bullet went wide, shattering a light fixture above Lucien's head. Lucien spun around, shock registering on his face as he saw his lieutenant wrestling on the ground with his lover. Enzo roared, trying to throw Maya off. He was strong, twice her weight, but Maya was desperate. She clamped onto his arm, controlling the weapon. "You traitor!" Maya screamed. Driving her knee into his ribs, Enzo backhanded her, a heavy blow that split her lip, but Maya didn't let go. She used his momentum against him. As he tried to stand, she locked her arms around his neck in a clinch, stepped inside his guard, and twisted. It was a judo throw she had practiced 1,000 times on the mats at Ironheart. Enzo's feet left the ground. He flipped over her hip and crashed violently down the concrete stairs. The gun skittered away across the landing. Enzo lay at the bottom of the steps, groaning, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Maya stood at the top, chest heaving, blood dripping from her chin. "Maya!" Lucien was there. He grabbed her, pulling her into his chest with a force that knocked the wind out of her. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her neck, shielding her body with his own, as if he could block out the entire world. "You idiot," Lucian choked out, his voice shaking. "You reckless, beautiful idiot. You saved me." "Twice," Maya gasped, clutching the lapels of his coat. "That is twice. Lucian." Outside, the wail of police sirens rose, drowning out the screams of the crowd. Blue and red lights flashed against the high windows. The raid had begun. "They are here," Lucian said, pulling back to look at her. "The police. The feds. We have to run," Maya said, grabbing his hand. "No," Lucian said. He looked calm now. A strange, peaceful resolve settled over his features. "If we run, we're looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives. Ravello will rebuild. Enzo will recover. It never ends." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a small, encrypted hard drive. "What is that?" Maya asked. "Everything," Lucian said. "Ledgers, names, routes, evidence on Ravello, evidence on Enzo, and evidence on the Valtieri syndicate." He looked at the drive, the sum of his life's work, and then he looked at Maya. "I made a deal," Lucian explained quickly, pressing the drive into her hand. "There is a detective down there, Detective Miller. He's honest. You give this to him. It buys me immunity for the past crimes in exchange for dismantling the entire network. Ravello goes to prison for life. Enzo goes to prison, and the syndicate. The syndicate dies tonight. But your reputation," Maya whispered. "You will lose everything." "I have you," Lucian said, smiling, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm not losing anything. I am trading up." He kissed her hard on the forehead, then turned and raised his hands as the SWAT team burst through the doors. "It is over," Lucian shouted to the police. "The drive is with the girl. It is over." Maya watched as they cuffed him, tears blurring her vision. But as they led him away, he looked back over his shoulder and winked. 6 months later, the autumn air in Greybridge was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and wood smoke rather than exhaust and fear. Maya flipped the sign in the window of the Harbor Light Diner from open to closed. The diner was quiet, the floors gleaming. Sal was humming in the kitchen as he prepped for the morning rush. The R carved into the back door had been sanded down and painted over, leaving only a faint scar that you had to look closely to see. Maya untied her apron and hung it on the hook. She grabbed her gym bag and walked out into the cool evening. She walked 3 blocks to Ironheart. The gym was buzzing with life. The sound of laughter and gloves hitting pads spilled out onto the street. Inside, 20 kids from the neighborhood were running drills. Pops was sitting on a bench, barking orders with a grin on his face. And in the office, sitting behind a desk covered in legitimate tax forms and invoices, was Lucian. He looked different. The expensive Italian suits were gone, replaced by a simple gray sweater and jeans. He looked younger. The hard lines of stress around his eyes had softened. He wasn't the king of Greybridge anymore. He was just the gym manager, a man who crunched numbers and fixed the plumbing when it leaked. He looked up when Maya walked in. The way his face lit up, like someone had just turned on a light inside him, never failed to make her heart skip a beat. "Hey," he said, standing up. "Hey yourself," Maya said, leaning against the doorframe. "Books balance." "Down to the penny," Lucian said proudly. "We made a profit this month, $300. "We are practically moguls," Maya laughed. "Do not spend it all in one place." Lucian walked around the desk. He didn't move with that predatory grace anymore. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing to hide. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Yeah," Maya said. "Let us go home." They locked up the gym together, waving goodbye to Pops. They walked hand in hand through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. It wasn't a wealthy area. The sidewalk was cracked, and the streetlights flickered, but it was theirs. They reached the front door of their apartment building, a modest walk-up with a sturdy brick facade. Lucian stopped, pulling Maya into the shelter of the doorway. Out of the wind. He looked at her, his eyes tracing the line of her face. The bruises had long since faded, leaving only the strength beneath. "What?" Maya asked. Smiling, just looking, Lucian murmured. He reached out, his hand cradling her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin with a reverence that bordered on worship. His other hand settled on her waist, pulling her gently against him. "You are staring," Maya teased, hooking her fingers into the lapel of his jacket. "It is rude." "I am admiring," Lucian corrected. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "There is a difference." He kissed her. It was slow and deep, tasting of the cold night air and the warmth of a promise kept. It wasn't the desperate kiss of a man afraid of dying. It was the steady, enduring kiss of a man who was finally living. Maya melted against him, smiling against his lips. She tugged him closer, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart. "You have gotten soft." "Valtieri," she whispered, pulling back just an inch to look at him. Lucian chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Only for you, Maya, only for you." He took her hand again, interlacing their fingers. They stepped back out of the doorway, into the golden glow of the street lamp. They walked up the steps together, two fighters who had left the war behind, ready to face the bravest challenge of all, a normal, happy life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Maya and Lucian from the gritty streets of Greybridge to their hard-earned, happy ending. Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for more passionate, thrilling, and emotional tales. Do not forget to like the video and share your thoughts in English in the comment section below. Your support means the world to me.